Hi, ladies and fellas. Welcome in this new video in my series of video that aims at putting out there some content about room acoustics. Well, room acoustics, but not only because the purpose of this video is to demystify the difference between soundproofing and room acoustics. I see a whole lot of people on the internet covering the topic of room acoustics. Well, in general, I would say sound treatment. In sound treatment, I hear a branch which is dedicated to soundproofing and another uh, sound treatment, which is kind of blurry if you ain't know what's the purpose of that. So the difference from the fundamental difference between room acoustics and soundproofing is that soundproofing, we're talking about the structural analysis of your house of your building, and we are trying to understand how do sound propagates through the walls so that the person or your neighbor that is in the adjacent room hears what's going on in your room. This has nothing to do with room acoustics. In another hand, room acoustics is regards what's going on in the room itself, with reflections, with modes, with tangential modes, with and that's the sheer difference between those two. Um, you can have a room that sounds great by itself. So if you're in the room and I set up a whole lot of diffusers and resonators and bass traps, power absorption, whatever you want, it's gonna sound nice because we're gonna dampen the extra reverberation. Uh, we can create, but it's very difficult, a tonal control in the bass region. So if you want a flat response, you can get it. It's very challenging and there's many things to consider, but nowadays it's something that some studios get close to that supposedly so-called flat response in the frequency domain. Now, soundproofing. So you can have a room that is flat, supposedly, but sound is gonna leak in the neighboring rooms, and in another hand, you can have a room that doesn't sound good at all, that has no treatment, that has a awful lot of specular reflection, for example, but the sound doesn't leak in the neighboring rooms because let's say the walls are thick enough, then there's less sound that transmits, and that's a little misunderstanding right there too. But I'm just putting out there some of the roadblocks for the video, the upcoming content I'm about to show you guys. So I think that you have seen here and there some people doing uh, 2D models of rooms, cut views where we see the room as if we were looking at it from the ceiling. And those studies, you can see something like isosurfaces if we're in the modal region. So you probably know that room modes occurs at low frequencies. They have they create a pressure gradient in certain points of the room, depending on what frequency. So if you are at the first mode of the room, you get a distribution that is axial. If you get to higher modes, then you get sort of like a combination until the isosurfaces uh, be- become blurry, let's say, because the overlapping of um frequencies um makes it hard to really see a pattern really coming out. So, well, applied to a an object, which in this case is a concrete slab. This is kind of what we get. I think I had forgive me for that one because I thought I have a visual of that, or it must be this one, outer surface. Oh no, mode shape. I'm sorry. So this is kind of like what you get depending on the fundamental second, third, etc., etc. So here is the model distribution, for example, of a first mode, and you see it really takes a sinusoidal shape. And then if you get to lower frequencies, then the lower lobes you get up until the fundamental that only has one lobe. So room modes, this is not room modes, but it's just an example of what do a mode provides as a pressure gradient point of view. And you also get the higher part of the frequency analysis, the mids and the highs, with absorption, porous absorption, and specular reflections. It's going to tell you about how much reverberation you're going to get. So, room acoustics is mostly about those two topics, and sound proofing is has nothing to do with any of those. And that's a little bit the an example of a study that was conducted, as I said, on a concrete structure. This is a concrete slab right there as an object of our study. And the purpose is to understand how do the sound propagate not only in air as room acoustics is mostly focused on, but this time around in a material, in this case, an elastic material. So you really have to think of it as the sound wave. How does it reach another room where there's no media in between those rooms? There's not a fluid media. You maybe uh, this misunderstanding come from the fact that we always said to people that sounds transmit through hair, which is right in some sort of way, but it also transmits through solids, and that's why soundproofing is all about. If your neighbor hears you, it's because the partition between you and him is vibrating in some sort of way, and the sound wave um, is being transferred to him through that vibration. So that mental projection is very true when we look at something called the Mass's law, or the law of mass, which states that a rigid structure is vibrating just like a piston would vibrate. And that's how the vibration is transmitted to the neighboring room. A couple of days ago, I have found a very interesting animation about that. Fortunately, I've lost track of it. Um, Damn. Guess I'm gonna have to show my history to the people. A lot of music, a lot of stuff. Mostly one thing that, here we are, APMR. So that's somebody that really wound up an amazing piece of information about acoustics in general, porous acoustics. I'm gonna talk about that in other videos, but and there is one animation at some point. That's when you don't prepare your videos and you do it off the reel. Yeah. Yes, transmission loss of a single partition wall, and that's what I was talking about, the Masses law. So the Masses law states that the whole structure is vibrating in sync, and that's how a neighbor can hear you without the sound being transmitted through a fluid medium in our nature, in our planet here. And so this is a quite a tricky subject because it mingles acoustics and mechanics. Because as long as we are not in a fluid anymore, but we are in a solid, you get displacement that means you are studying something in the mechanics point of view. The deformation, and this plot right there was not nothing more but a solid mechanic plot of the displacement. So the purpose of this soundproofing aspect is to qualify the sound transmission loss between one room to the next. And again, this has nothing to do with a frequency graph or uh, trying to see the alleys and valleys. We don't care about that anymore. It's not a tonal quality that we're looking for. What we're looking for is to uh, mitigate as much as possible the sound in the next room. So we might believe the thicker a wall is, the more efficient it's gonna be. But this statement is fallacious as well, as we're gonna see in this website that I prepared for you. That, well, it's a document, an extract from a journal called um, acoustical assemblies that um, base all his analysis on something called the STC, the sound transmission class, which is a metric that illustrate how well a partition wall is going to perform. And basically the higher the order is, the higher the rating is, the the better the wall is as a point of view of dampening the sound and uh, enabling isolation between the two rooms. And for that, they compare different styles of layering. So this is a cut view. So you got to think of it as a cross section of how the wall look like. And for each configuration, there is a STC, an evaluation. I've just been showing a little bit COMSOL multiphysics that you probably know right there. The equivalent in our study, because here we are in a physical system, so it's more, it's a model. So the the results, let's say, are more more sophisticated. First of all, because it is different for each frequency. When you use analytical low like that, it's kind of an average. But you see, with using a multiphysics model helps you really spotting the cut of frequency, for example. So you are more, you can go more in depth with certain aspects that a simple analytical law would not give you, for example. And this is also the breeding ground for uh, optimization and stuff like that. So this is very powerful right there. This is not from me. The room that I've been showing the last time was my model, but this is a model from the bank. And there is a multiphysics coupling, as I've said, with mechanics and acoustics. The most interesting plot is the sound transmission loss. So let's say I play 90 dB here. This graph is telling me that at 40 hertz, I get 57 decibels of sound pressure decrease. So if I play 90 here, the neighbor is getting, you do 90 minus 57, so it must be 30 30. What the hell, I cannot do calculation at 1 a.m. in the morning. um, it must be 33. So the neighbor only hears 33 decibels, which is not that much at the end of the day. This is a bit exaggerated because in this study they took the example of a 20 centimeter concrete slab. I don't think that in the real world that would be possible, but well, at least it can be a good tool, a good extra to look up for in order to really dive into what's going on more precisely. But with that kind of document right there. You can see and have an overview of the technology itself, and abstracting a little bit the physics that I can understand for some people is mind-boggling. So what you can see over there is therefore the evaluation of the STC, uh, depending on what kind of configuration you are pulling out. So let's take the first one where we have a plasterboard against, well, two plasterboards uh, facing facing themselves, and in the middle we place a steel stud, the 24 24 inch means they are separated 24-inch apart, I guess, but I'm not sure. But whatever. Uh, this is a very interesting rule of thumb right there to follow, but the thicker you go, the better the ecstasy is. But what you put inside finally does not have such a great effect on the ecstasy. You can see here we are more or less the same thickness. We are adding two boards and fibrous material in the layering, and we don't get such a big increase of the STC. So, well, it's something that call me into question, because I see too many of these YouTube guys. They just cover all the room with fibrous material, pretending that they are isolating the sound. But this very simple document shows you that actually not. It's ineffective to stack to stack it like that as a unit, because everything is stuck together. And I'm going to talk a bit more about how foolish it is, the how and why, when you're going to see the ecstasy of different formulations. You're going to go, okay, we are maybe on the right track when we start to talk about decoupling. Those structures right there, well, 7 inch start to get a good coefficient, but those construction, they never gonna exceed 60, because they are something we call um, coupled structures, which means that they are stuck together as a unit, as in COMSOL it would be one domain. So if one starts to vibrate, it ultimately transmits the vibration to the next element, so on and so forth. And so that's how you get a resulting sound wave that is strong, because the whole thing oscillates in unison. That is coupling. And you see, you can go 5 inch and you get 59. It's already very good, 59. But you got to go 5 inch, and you got to put, that must be some sort of an elastomer, but I'm not sure. Well, they said face layer joints finished, which must be an elastomer or hyperelastic high density material, and you need to go almost 6 inches to get 59. And when we start to look at the decoupled structures, you get a 52 without uh, any absorptive material. So decoupled means that the two walls are connected together as loosely as possible, so that when one vibrates, it doesn't reflects back uh, on the secondary part. The other side doesn't vibrate the same because they are not mechanically speaking connected together. And that's how you get the best, well, the most efficient way to dampen the sound transmission from one room to the next. And you get a 60 like that with a 5 inch and a half setup and a little bit of porous material. You get an excellent STC for that. Porous material is expensive. If you can rid of it, if you can get rid of it, sorry, the better off you'll be. Uh, well, so that's really one main massive outcome that you can draw from this document right there, as well as the wood frames. The wood frames are catastrophic. When you see the STC equivalent with wood frame, I don't know what's going on with wood, but it must be because wood is more conductive, it's more thick, so it vibrates even more than metallic studs. But the STC aren't that great, and when you see the thickness of it, my God, man, it's it feels like it's the one thing not to do that people do. It's to do wooden frame in order to isolate when uh, tiny studs and lightweight studs seems to be the best because they there's less mass that vibrates. So that's how I see it, and it would be amazing for me and or for other people to start to model that in a multiphysics software, for example, to see what's the best configuration in an optimization problem, for example, where the cost function would be the thickness. We want to have as little thickness as possible, but with the best STC as possible. Um, and that would require probably to go more in depth into the solid mechanics model in order to design an equivalent mass spring system that represents well how the layered physical system vibrates in reality. That's kind of like the framework that I'm thinking about when I see STC study and multiphysics analysis, finite element method analysis. So, well, if there's one thing that you must think about is the treatment you put in your room only concerns your room, but it's not really gonna affect the neighboring room unless you start to work on what's going on between the wall that separate two rooms. Right now, if I put the the greatest configuration, well, we have a 65. Let's say this one. I keep the some ceramic tiles on each side. and let's just say all my room got this setup. Then ceramic tires, they have a surface roughness, uh, which is very feeble, and so they're gonna provide much reflection. So my room is going to be a disaster. Sound is going to be terrible, but the sound transmission is going to be highly and effectively dampened. Now, if on top of that I put absorptive material, then I'm going to reduce the reverberation and keep the 65, or I could even go higher than that. So you see, those are two problems that don't really communicate with one another. They are very independent, and treating a room is, if you have those kind of constraints, neighbors, kids, wife, and you want to have really a shelter where nothing can be heard from the outside, start with soundproofing first, and then you're gonna build your diffusers, your resonators, your bass traps, your everything you want. But that's secondary. That's once the architectural thing is there and sturdy, that we can start to do this tuning with resonators and whatever you want. And by the way, what you see behind me is a Q47 that I've uh, built in plasterboard, so that it's very cheap, way cheaper than a wooden frame. So that was kind of a first shot. So that's why it looks a bit hard. But I have another one right there, which is a lot better, and I'm gonna do a video about that too, to give, maybe not to give the recipe out there like that, but just to tell you that for more or less 40 bucks, plasterboard, a little bit of glue, a, well, you need tools like always, a cutter. You ain't even need an electric cutter, but just a hand cutter is perfect. Uh, an electric, well, I would recommend at least to have an electric screwdriver, and that's all, because plasterboard is you can do the cut by hand, and yeah, I forgot, because the structure is with metallic studs, so you would need something to do the perforations, and some kind of a shear to cut the studs at the proper length. It's pretty much all. So it's very cost effective, and it provides the same extra, and it's not an extra for me. It became an essential. Diffusion in a room is highly recommended for eye purposes, recording rooms, or any sort of places where acoustics is critical. So I'm gonna give a bit of the recipe in another video. Hopefully, this one was within reach of those that are gonna take some time out to listen to me. If you have questions, you can drop them in the comment, and I see you in the next episode. See you guys.